Happy Patch Tuesday, everybody. It is August. We have made it. We are now over the halfway point in the year, and we're just kind of going over some of our CVE drops for today. And right off the bat, there are a lot of RCEs this month. Super fun. Yeah, but I'm Ryan Bronstein. I'm taking over hosting for Tom Boyer just this week, and so we're having a little fun without him. And with me is Seth Hoyt. Seth?
Yep,
Yeah.
I'm here, the senior security engineer. Done a few of these now, but yeah, look forward to diving in.
Yeah, and we've snagged someone who's done like a lot of IT work over the last few years, David Van Heerden from another team within Automox to join us on this podcast. So,
Yeah,
David, give me a
I'm
rundown
the
here.
I'm the technical product marketing manager for Automox, but I only snuck into that team after about 10 years of doing IT work. And don't mind my shameless product placement here of our auto mascot and our associated Lego set that I build on my own podcast. So another shameless plug for me.
Yeah. Well, thanks for taking some time out of your day, David, to hang out with Seth and I. Yeah, so we'll just jump into it. Right? It's rolling. Happy intro music. They're gonna plug all that in. Everything is nice, happy, fun time. Cool. All right, and we're in. We got CVE 38180. It's a SmartScreen prompt remote code execution vulnerability. This one has been found in the wild. It would be really easy to trick somebody into engaging with this on their machine. It can either be as simple as like a phishing email or a browser extension, and it looks like the file could easily be disguised as some kind of application with a launcher that requests no UI, and um, you know, it's I think this really kind of speaks to understanding the importance of like what you're running on your device to your user base and kind of engaging with them to be aware of what comes in the email, what browser extensions are coming in, things of that nature. I mean, that's just kind of what this speaks to me on.
Yeah, I think that's the scariest part of it is how prevalent it could be in the browser extension world. I
Yeah,
know that that's something that's very challenging for a lot of IT folks, right? Is governing what can be installed in these browsers because they don't need admin privs to do it.
yeah, and and I definitely agree with that. I've reviewed a lot of different browsers and managed browsers over the last few months, and it there's a lot out there that can really help with this type of problem, at least in the browser extension world. But I swear I always come back to education on like so many things in security, just making people aware of
Yeah.
what can happen on their machine.
I think the simple call to action on that front is, Chrome is dominant, right? So we're all very likely using that in our environments. You might not have Chrome Enterprise deployed with your enterprise management suite, via Google Workspace. But you can still control those kinds of configurations on what extensions are allowed via your plist entries, via your
Yeah,
MDMs, or you can use your EDR or some finer control tools like Automox that can modify those config files and enforce some extension controls. So
yeah,
definitely talk to your vendors in your existing stack and see how they can help you manage your extensions.
yeah, absolutely.
Yep,
Um,
and with that, from the enterprise level, you have a little more protection, hopefully, with other, you know, AV products and other controls that are in place. But from like a typical at-home user, this is specifically scary because SmartScreen is a big deal in like kind of like a first line of defense thing, blocking malicious web pages and executables and things like that. So like the at-home user, I feel, would be more at risk on their personal device than the enterprise level, because hopefully at the enterprise level you do have that extra protection.
yeah, I feel like people are a lot more cavalier with what they do at home, especially like just your general user. Like I'm not talking about like, I mean, obviously people like us, we do some pretty nutso stuff in our home stacks just for fun. But just like your average user going into their email and maybe finding something, or like, oh, this new browser like lets you, I don't know, stream the Olympics or something like that from Chrome for free or something without having to get a Peacock subscription. Now, like next thing you know, your computer is just like completely taken over by someone. But yeah, you've got a pretty interesting kernel elevation one, Seth.
So CVE 38133, and this is a Windows kernel elevation of privilege vulnerability. So as most people should know, the kernel, the Windows kernel, it's like that's the core of the Windows operating system. So like that controls everything at like a system level, right? So with this one, an attacker could exploit the vulnerability by again tricking a user into doing something. This time, it's sending a request to a malicious server. Then once that request is completed, and that could be from a phishing email, a malicious executable, a drive-by malvertising ad. Any of these
That's
things
wild.
they could bake this code into to connect to that server. Once connected, downloads that data to do arbitrary code execution. So if this whole thing is successful, they then have kernel level full system access admin privileges. So again, kind of like the last one, this is phishing, malvertising, malicious executables, shady web pages. That's kind of the go-to for a lot of these vulnerabilities. So you got to take care as usual with you got to watch out for those phishing emails. And again, don't be streaming the Olympics for free without a subscription, because a lot of those sites they got those malvertising ads baked in. So
Yeah.
you can never be too cautious visiting those sites.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I like your note on this for keeping OS and software up to date as kind of, because there's that preventative action that you can do right on the defense side, which is train your users on avoiding phishing attempts and everything else as the ingress. But to be proactive is to continually update that environment and that operating system. To kind of segue the topic over to that of the broader world of Microsoft and how they are managing their operating system. I know a lot of us are made that transition out of the server 2010 to 2012, and we're all bracing for impact to update to the next major version release. But it's all trending towards the new environment that like the Apple ARM world forced us into, in that kernel extensions are on their way out.
Yeah.
There's a big kind of geopolitical thing behind it, where the EU made an argument that Microsoft was being anti-consumer and monopolistic and not allowing third-party apps to access the kernel. But I think
Yeah.
all of these major kernel-based vulnerabilities and incidents that we've seen lately, that are all centered around kernel access, is helping Microsoft's case of updating their operating system to restrict that kernel access more and more. So pushing us more into user land than down into the subsystem. So for that, it's be proactive, prepare your environments for those major OS upgrades, is what you should strategize for in the next year.
Yeah. And until then, get a really solid EDR. Oh man, and I think our last couple vulnerabilities involve printers and print spooler
So much fun.
elevation. Yeah,
I
yeah,
love. Yeah,
but
this one kind of nabs folks that haven't modernized their environments, which isn't kind of like a name and shame scenario that we're in. It is it is just kind of bearing the honesty of, all right, it's time to get rid of that old legacy tech and move to the new stuff, because we're just going to see more and more of these vulnerabilities pop up.
yeah,
Thankfully, the solutions out there are convenient and easy to roll out. It's just putting that manual labor in and decommissioning those print spooler services and servers and updating to the newer standards.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting conversation as a whole. Like the three of us have all been in these environments, like where we've come in and it's been like just this. I mean, not to say it like in a weird way, but like old and crusty like tech. We've got like, just non-modernized like firewalls and old print servers that are like on Windows 2008 if we're lucky. And some of those things like they really rely on LPD like to you know push out printing through GPOs and whatnot through an environment. A lot of times it's virtualized in the same stack as other servers. Like it makes you kind of like look at it and go, could they escape this server if they got like system level access through one of these CVEs? Like that's it really highlights the importance of kind of moving forward with our tech. I'm
Yeah.
never like saying like bleeding edge all the time, especially like, we've seen plenty of like regressions come in plenty of bleeding edge, like especially Linux distros. And it's just good to keep up with the times a little bit.
And
Yeah.
for stuff like this, when you have servers like that in a stack, it's also important to have that network segregation as well.
Yeah.
That way you can kind of contain it. It might hit a couple of other things, but at least it's contained or mostly contained at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I
Segmentation
put
is the
on
key. Yeah.
Yeah, if I put on my like big paranoid hat, I think about it of, all right, I've got that little trailer office that nobody really cares about, and it's just like sitting off of its cheap internet service over there. And yeah, you got that old clunky machine sitting in the back running that LPD server service on it.
Yeah.
Like that one roaming laptop that connects to that network once a month can then receive something very nasty if that system was compromised through this. Because
Yeah.
once they get in, they sit and they listen, right? And
Yeah.
you might not notice that they've found a way in through this vulnerability. So scan your environments, do that health check to make sure, okay, we don't have this sitting around. The replacements out there are, again, easy to implement, using internet printing protocol, right? Going over HTTPS.
Yeah.
So you have that encrypted communication, and the authentication is very already well integrated into your environment. So yeah,
Yeah,
don't sleep on
that's
this
such a
one.
good point. Yeah, it's such a good point because like as people are transitioning, like their stuff to modernizing their infrastructure, sometimes services get left on even in the more modern end of the infrastructure. So like you may not be leveraging it, but doesn't mean it's not turned on your stack. Or God forbid you enable something like in a server feature, and it like turns it on for you by default, and it really pays to be aware of the services running within your server stacks. So
Yeah. I don't know if it's been mentioned yet, but just to be clear on this specific one, like LPD is something that has to be enabled. It is disabled by default.
yeah,
Obviously, that's a requirement for those servers, but it's not like you spin up a Windows server and this is on by default. So
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, that's gonna do it for us for today. Do you all have any closing thoughts? Anything?
yeah,
Patch
as
yourself?
usual, stay up to date, patch, stay off those shady web pages.
Absolutely. And don't try and stream the Olympics for free unless it's from Peacock, I guess. I don't know. Thanks for joining us this week, everybody. Join us next month.
Yeah, have a good
Bye.
one. See ya.